Hello, and welcome to this masterclass on enjoying a wild life, looking at how we can work with our body in order to experience greater well-being. My name is Robin Harris of Wild Wellbeing, and I'm passionate about this topic because it's basically been my journey. I went from a place where I was anxious, miserable, really depressed, and had a lot of health niggles, fatigue, aches and pains, brain fog, IBS, migraines, eczema. And I was looking for a way to make a change. I was not enjoying my life. In fact, it had got to the point where I was thinking, I just don't want to be here anymore. What's the point? All the color, all the joy, all the light has gone out of my life. And I just didn't know how to get it back. But I went on a journey and I discovered how we can turn things around. And it's not about a set of steps. It's what led to me creating WILD, the acronym that I use in my business, which is more about how we can shift our perspective, how we can take our power back and empower ourselves around our well-being and the life that we're living, how we can create and craft the life that we were born for, the life that we will love to be living. And so that's really what we're going to be looking at today. Have you ever thought about that word, enjoy? Did you know that actually what it's saying is to bring joy into? And you may not have thought about this before, but this is actually a choice. Now, I know sometimes it doesn't feel like a choice. We feel like we are the victim of the lives that we're living. We're the victim of what other people are doing, what society is doing, our health. But actually, we can take our power back. We can choose to bring joy into our lives. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. But so often, that's not how we feel. We can be living in chronic stress. Now, stress of itself isn't a bad thing. We need a certain amount of it to wake us up in the morning, to get us out of bed, to motivate us, to help us work through our to-do list and achieve our goals. But when we are living in chronic, high-level stress, with all that adrenaline and cortisol pumping around our body with nowhere to go, that's when it becomes detrimental to our health and our well-being. Our body is designed to have these hormones, and they're designed to help us. We call it the fight or flight system. So that kind of gives it away. It's designed to help us fight for our lives or flee for our lives. But a lot of the time, the stress that we experience in our lives nowadays, in our Western world, quite often an urban world in which many of us live, doesn't have those kinds of stressors by and large. We live a fairly safe existence most of the time relative to how it used to be back in the days when we were hunter-gatherers, living out in the wild, needing our tribe around us and having to protect ourselves from predators. But our body, our systems haven't received that memo yet. They're still operating under those old programs where they pump us full of adrenaline and cortisol in order to fight for our lives or flee for our lives. But is that effective for the things that stress us now? For many of us, our stressors are things like, am I going to get that promotion? How is the presentation going to go that I have to do? I have to stand up in front of maybe 100 people and give a talk, and I'm really nervous about that. Or what's the current financial situation going to mean for me? What happens if I lose my job and I can't pay my mortgage? Will I lose my home? These are the sorts of things that often stress us these days. And one of the things that really stresses me out from time to time is tech. So if the computer goes wrong, then that's not my area of expertise. I don't know what to do. I'm panicking. I'm going to lose the work that I've done, the paper that I've written, or whatever that might be. So for these kinds of stressors, fight or flight might not be a suitable response. We might, if it is a computer error, a computer challenge that we're experiencing, we're sitting at a desk working on our computer. To flee doesn't help. We can't fight the computer, but our body is still responding from those old programs, pumping us full of that adrenaline and cortisol, and it has nowhere to go. It has no outlet. So it's very important that we learn how to listen to our body. We learn to recognize when we're getting those stress feelings and these changes in our body so that we can take action. But unfortunately, when we live in a chronic state of stress, our body gets used to, adapts to, even on a certain level needs or feels it needs that level of adrenaline and cortisol. We become what's been called adrenaline junkies, because in order for our norm to be maintained, for us to feel that life is ticking along as it should do, even if it's not serving us, but we've got used to it, then we'll look for more adrenaline and more adrenaline and more adrenaline. And it's like that thing where they say about worriers, sometimes they almost need to look for something to worry about. If there's nothing currently causing anxiety in their environment, they kind of go looking for it sometimes. I know I was like that. I was so used to feeling hypervigilant, anxious, that if for any reason the anxiety level in my life appeared to go down, I got anxious about that. I was worrying about not worrying, and it all just was going round and round and just getting worse and worse. So just to be aware of how we can get into these patterns and how also society actually conditions us to that in many ways. Society focuses so much on our productivity and how much we do rather than who we are. So we feel that in order to keep our sense of value and our status, it can often leave us feeling we need to do more, we need to be more productive, which just adds to those stress levels. And Gabor Mate, in his latest book, he talks about the myth of normal and trauma, illness, and healing in a toxic culture, because often our Western developed so-called world is creating this toxic culture, which is just heaping pressure on us. You can see it in the media, which feeds that stress and anxiety and just throws more things at us to worry about. Also, we have our phones, we have our tablets and devices and our computers that are there 24/7, 365, pinging, demanding our attention, showing us things to think about and to worry about. There's very rarely good news. We just see all the stuff that's going wrong in the world. And it can give us that skewed impression that that's how the world is, that there isn't anything good out there. And the more we think like that, the more our brain needs to look for confirmation of that, because that's how we're wired. We're also wired with a negative bias. It's a survival strategy to pick up on any threats in our environment. But again, it's maybe not so appropriate in the times in which we're living now. But if we're already in that hypervigilant state, perhaps because of trauma in our childhood, we have been kind of pre-programmed, conditioned to live in that state, and our body will subconsciously be looking for more of that unless we start to break the patterns. This is a diagram of the health and well-being process that our bodies go through when they're in fight or flight and then move on into rest and repair, or rest and digest, the parasympathetic system. And I'm not going to go into this in great depth today, but you can find videos on my YouTube channel, Wild TV, on the playlist Let's Talk Wellbeing, where I look at the healing and dis-ease process and go into it in more depth and talk about each section of this diagram, go through from 1 on the left-hand side through to 9. But basically, what I want to share here today is that everything our body does, it does with a purpose. The body's responses and adaptations are not random. They're not out of control. They're not going wrong. They're not even attacking themselves. They're doing what they're doing for a purpose. So when we are in fight or flight, when we're in that stress state, our body will be going through changes. And I'll show a little bit more about that later on the physiological, what we can see happening or feel happening in our bodies. And there'll also be things like we will feel cold on our fingers and toes, our hands and our feet, and our digestion will start to feel maybe a little bit uncomfortable, that nervous stomach sensation, because the blood is being rediverted to the essential organs and our muscles to fuel the fight or flight. We also might suddenly crave sweet foods, sugary foods, chocolate, energy drinks, caffeine, coffee, again to fuel that fight or flight. We may feel restless and find sleep more difficult, but that's because the body is trying to give us energy and keep us awake longer in order to find solutions to the challenge we feel we're facing. We also may be video looping for that same reason. We're trying to see the situation from all different angles in order to be able to find the solution and the way out, the way to get away from the challenge that we feel we're experiencing. In this part of the process, though, we don't tend to feel pain and we don't feel very sick most of the time. Sometimes if you get an adrenaline surge, you might feel nauseous and people can even be sick. But that's part of the body's process, again, to lighten the load so that it's more able to engage in that fight or that flight. But by and large, what we feel here is energized. We're buzzing. And the fact that we feel less pain, that's a natural numbing out. Because if we were fighting for our lives and we got hit and just curled up in pain, we wouldn't be still fighting and we might not survive. Equally, if we were running away and we stubbed our toe or stood on something and hurt our foot and stopped running, we might not escape, we might not survive. So you can see how all of these things are actually aiming at supporting our survival. The responses our body makes are very specific and will be in response to the threat or the pressure or the stress that we feel we're experiencing. And that's a very unique individual thing. It's very subjective. So I might look at a situation and interpret it one way. A person next to me or a member of my family may look at it differently. Their response may be different. And we can pick these things up in the way that we talk about things. So I might say, oh, that left a bad taste in my mouth. And somebody else might say, oh, that took my breath away. And that is a clue as to how our bodies are responding and where in our bodies we are holding and trying to process the stress that we've experienced. And again, as I say, there's more about all of this on my YouTube channel. But basically, our body is just trying to support us. It's trying to help us to survive and to get through the situation that we're finding so challenging. That's how we've survived as a species. We are programmed to do everything we can to support our survival. When we come out of the stress phase and move into the right-hand side of this diagram, regeneration phase, this is where we start to experience what we think of as the symptoms of dis-ease. But basically, it's our body seeking to return to balance. We've made changes and adaptations in the stress phase, and in order to get back to balance and well-being, we need to undo those, release them, let them go, detox from them. And that can be rather uncomfortable. We may feel sick, we may feel pain, we might have something like eczema, as I had. But basically, that is just the body doing what it is programmed to do, going through the natural, normal, detoxing, rebalancing processes. The thing to say here is that the stress, the intensity of the stress will be mirrored by the intensity of the regeneration. So if the stress was exceptionally intense, the regeneration will be exceptionally intense also if we go through it fast. There are ways that we can use to dial things down. One of the techniques that I use is EFT, emotional freedom technique, or tapping. And that can help to dial things down, to reduce the intensity and also potentially reduce the length of time that we need in order to get through the regeneration and out the other side. It can help us to go through that on a more linear path rather than sometimes what we actually do is push ourselves back into stress. There are a number of ways that we can do that, one of which is our self-talk. If we are thinking, oh my goodness, there's that pain again. Is it getting worse this time? I don't know that I'm ever going to recover from this. That sort of self-talk perpetuates the cycle. So the more that we are conscious of and aware of what we are doing, what we're saying to ourselves, the choices we're making, and being response-able in those rather than reactive, the better it is for our well-being. But just to say that all of the things our body is doing, it's doing for a purpose. It's doing to support us and to help our survival and our well-being. And this process of dis-ease and well-being, it offers us information. It carries wisdom for us. And that wisdom helps us to understand what stresses we've been under, why we respond in that way, and how we can better support ourselves to grow, to step into the fullness of who we are, who we were born to be, and to be better equipped, more empowered in the future for whatever things life might throw at us. So this is the recap of what's going on in sympathetic stress phase versus calm or parasympathetic, fight and flight on one side, rest and repair or rest and digest on the other. So these are some of the things that we can see or feel in our bodies. The eyes dilating in stress and then returning to a normal size. Another example of how the body just seeks to come back to normal, back to balance when it slips out of fight or flight and back into rest and repair. We might be breathing fast and shallow when we're in stress, but when we are relaxed, our breathing is lower down, it's slower, it's more gentle. It's deeper into our lungs. And when we can breathe that way, it sends a feedback loop to our bodies. It's okay. All is well. I'm safe. So that's something that you can do, and I'll be talking about that in a minute, but using your breath to help bring down that level of stress and anxiety and bring back those feelings of calm. Our heart rate increases when we're stressed and then returns to a normal level when we come back into the parasympathetic. And when we're in stress, our gut is not functioning as well as it should. It's not working at its most effective. And this can lead to things like inflammation, leaky gut syndrome, food intolerances. So again, very important when we find ourselves in stress to take action, to bring ourselves back into the parasympathetic, to rest, to calm, to stillness, which allows the gut to function more effectively, breaking the food down completely so that the nutrients become bioavailable to us, enabling us to digest and assimilate them properly, to absorb them, and also then to have them as resources when we need to repair or we need to do a little bit of maintenance to our bodies, growing those new cells, producing the proteins and all of the things that our body needs to do to keep us healthy. One of the great things that we can do to support all of this is to get to know ourselves on a deeper level, to tune in and listen on that deep level to our bodies and to what they are seeking to share with us. They're always sharing information in how we feel physically, but also emotionally, and also the thoughts that we think, because our feelings feed our thoughts and vice versa. And did you know that the most of your serotonin production, the bulk of that, takes place in your gut? So it's impacted by what level of stress you're holding, how you're digesting your food, what you're eating, all of these things. So everything in our body, every tissue, organ, system, it's all interconnected and interdependent. And listening to that, noticing that, observing that, helps us to develop what I call a body vocabulary. What is my body saying to me? What is it seeking to share? How do I know when stress is starting to build? How do I know what it feels like to feel good so that when I feel stress, I can take the right action in order to get back to that better feeling state? So I'm going to talk you through a body scan right now to help with that listening, that noticing, that observing. And I'm going to invite you to take a seat if you're not already sitting, and to keep your arms uncrossed, your legs uncrossed, and to have your feet flat on the floor. And I'm going to talk you down through the whole of your body. And please just notice and observe. Nothing is right or wrong. It's not good or bad. And don't seek to label anything, but just observe, just notice. Whatever's going on just is. It's just information. And that's all you need to take from it as you go through this scan. So I'll invite you also to close your eyes. It can help with going deeper within. And bring your attention, first of all, to the top of your head, to your scalp. Just tune in and get a sense of how your scalp is feeling today. Is there any tension or any tightness there? And again, just notice. Then coming down over your face, your forehead, your eye sockets, your eyes, just noticing how they're feeling. Your nose, cheeks, jaw, where your tongue is sitting in your mouth, into your throat and your neck, across your shoulders, and just getting a sense and a feel of where your shoulders are. Are they down or up, forward or back? Just observing. Then down through your arms, upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, hands, fingers, and thumbs. Our hands do so much for us every day. So just check in with them, see how they're feeling. Then coming back up to the base of your neck and carrying on down each vertebra, each rib, your lungs, your heart beating, and on down into your abdomen, just getting a sense of how things feel, all the organs within your abdomen, and on down into your pelvis, your seat bones in contact with the chair, and further on down your thighs, your knees, calves, ankles, feet, your toes, and bringing your attention then to the soles of your feet and their contact with the floor, feeling that sinking into the connection you have with the floor, with the earth beneath you, how grounding that is. And then when you're ready, in your own time, just wriggle those fingers and toes a little bit, bring your attention back to the room, and open your eyes once more. And this is a great exercise, as I was saying, just to tune into your body, get familiar with your baseline, what it means for you to feel stressed, or what it means for you to feel relaxed and to feel good and in that state of flow. And that helps you to develop your vocabulary, your resilience, your emotional literacy and awareness and flexibility and adaptability, all of which are great for our well-being. And I haven't yet gone into any depth about what WILD is. As I said, it's an acronym that I developed on my journey towards well-being. And it's bringing together various different concepts that support a healthy perception and perspective on life, one that's supportive and uplifting. And each letter stands for the different words here on the screen. So wonder, being able to see the world with those childlike eyes of wonder, as if everything is new and fresh and you're coming across it for the first time, and it makes you feel awe, and it also makes you wonder, what does this, why does it do that, how does that work? So curiosity with compassion. The next letter is I, intuition. Every single one of us has our own unique intuition, inner knowing, inner sense that is our compass and our guide. When we can tune into that intuition, it lets us know what is right for us. And I run a workshop on this, which is all about how do I tune in? How does my body tell me these things? How do I know when something is good for me versus something isn't serving me well? So we can begin using things like the body scan and our body vocabulary, start to get to know ourselves, our body, our way of being, and how it shares with us those messages, those indicators of something is good for me or something just isn't supporting me. And that's not to say it's a bad thing. It's just, it's not for me. It doesn't resonate. It doesn't support. It doesn't uplift. It doesn't support me. So that's fine. I can just let it be. The next letter is L for loving. Loving ourselves as we are and as we are not. So often we can think of all the things that, well, I'm not good at this and I'm not good at that and I can't do that very well and so's much better at this than I am. And we criticize ourselves. How about if instead we could think of all the things we love about ourselves, loving our body and what it does for us and enables us to do, and the experiences it's given us and allowed us to have, or picking on the things that we do like about ourselves, allowing ourselves to like things about ourselves rather than focusing on the things we don't like. So what might those be for you? How can you love yourself more? What makes you feel more beautiful inside of you that helps you to celebrate who you are? Because when we can do that, it liberates us. It also allows our inner light to shine. Our gifts, our unique gifts that nobody else can do the way that we can do them, Nobody else brings them to the world in the way that we do. And when we can love ourselves, we can share those. We can allow our light to shine. And if everybody did that, what an amazing world we would be living in. So loving ourselves as we are, but also loving ourselves in the things that maybe aren't our strengths. And that's okay. They're somebody else's strengths. We don't have to be perfect at everything. We are perfectly imperfect. If the whole world was full of perfect people, it would be like one of those movies that are really creepy, that it's just so unnatural and so unreal. We would be like mannequins or like robots or something, and we'd be clones of each other, and it would be boring. Life is designed to be colorful. Life is designed to be abundant and rampant and explosive in color and variety and all of those amazing things. So when we love ourselves, we allow our bit of that wild to come in. And dance. So often I used to think that life was one step forward and two steps back, and that was tough and hard and a struggle. But then I thought, but don't we do that when we dance? What about if life was just a dance? It wasn't a competition. It wasn't a test. There was no judgment. It didn't matter what direction we went in. What mattered was who we were being, the choices that we were making, the light that we were allowing ourselves to shine. Maybe it doesn't matter what tempo that goes to or what music is in the background of our lives. None of that matters. What's important is how we choose to use what we have and to make the most of that and allow our light to shine by, okay, what is the dance? What is the music? What is the tempo? What is the beat? And listening to our own inner response to that and dancing to the beat of our own drum, to our own interpretation of that music. So, what does wild look like in practice? And for me, it's very much about a practice of radical self-care. And I say radical because sometimes it goes against what society conditions us to believe, that self-care is selfish or that we are the bottom of our own list. We give to everybody else and then we might tune in and see what we need. But for me, radical self-care is kind of turning that on its head and saying, I can't give to anyone else unless I'm taking care of myself first. It's not selfish. It's actually generous. I've written a blog about this because when we can give to ourselves, we have the resources to give freely to other people. Years ago, I was doing my best to give, but I felt depleted, I felt exhausted, I felt burnt out, and I ended up feeling resentful because I was thinking I'm having to give out of feeling like I have nothing, and who's giving to me, who's caring for me? So I very strongly feel that we care for ourselves first, and through that we care for others. But also, it's not that indulgent caring, it's not letting ourselves off the hook, but it's being very caring in a responsible way and in an accountable way. So I might do those things like having a bath on a Friday night, lighting a few candles, adding a few essential oils, playing some music, having a glass of wine. But it's not simply that. That can be quite superficial, and it might be indulgent, it might be a distraction from the stuff that maybe we have a sense, I need to go deeper, I need to understand more about myself, I need to ask those challenging questions of myself. And that is also part of self-care. It's that radical self-care that goes to that deeper level and really addresses the core needs so that we are then freed to be able to support others in deeper, more uplifting ways. Because having read Gabor Mate's, a lot of Gabor Mate's work, he talks about trauma and how trauma can limit us. And I know that from myself and my own experience as I was growing up, I had really limited myself. I had shut my world down to such a small little thing. But basically, wild is about allowing our wildness to show, our true essence, our true nature to show unapologetically. That's not to say we don't consider others, but we also need to be true to ourselves. And I think it's being responsible, true to ourselves in a respectful way. And we best do that by getting in touch with who we really are, by listening and observing with all of our being. And in order to do that, this slide now is talking about one of the things that I think is paramount, the importance of rest. I've written a blog about the power of pause, and on my podcast with Nigel Streeter, the Positive Progress podcast, struggle with that sometimes, too much alliteration, too many P's. But on that, we've talked about the power of stop. It's all the same thing. It's that ability to give ourselves permission to stop, to pause, to rest. Because in this busy, busy world where we're constantly being demanded for our attention, to answer our phones, answer our emails, what's going on in the world, what's the latest that our friends have posted on Facebook, whatever it might be, to take a step back from that and rest is radical self-care. And it gives us that stillness, or that opportunity for stillness and for space and time. I also have a masterclass called Time and Space Just for You. So giving ourselves permission to take that time, even when other people, other things may seem to be clamoring for our attention, we need to put ourselves first, and at times when it's appropriate, and say, actually, I'm going to take some me time right now. I really need that. And as an extrovert introvert, or an introverted extrovert, I am somebody who needs that space and time. I need to step back. I love being around people. I love networking. I love being with friends. I love being with family. But I also need to balance that out with time and space just for me, to be still, to be quiet, to be on my own. I love getting out in nature for that and just feeling its stillness. When it's still, sometimes here we have very strong winds and it can feel wild and energizing and blows the cobwebs away. But I love early in the morning, taking the dog out for a walk, and sometimes the calm, only the birds singing, no wind, no people. It's just so still. A sunrise, a sunset, the stars, the ocean. I love all of these things. So for you, it might not be nature, or it might be different aspects of nature, but finding what it is for you. It's a very individual thing, a very subjective thing. Also for rest, you might be somebody who likes to get mindful. I practice that with various different things. Again, often nature. So taking a pine cone and just exploring it. Or here where we live, we have horses. And when I first saw the underside of a dung beetle, I know, very exciting. But on the surface, the top layer, the upper side, they are black, just black. But you turn them over and they are peacock colors, purple and teal and petrol colors, and just stunning, really. So those sorts of things, or just everyday objects. In my book, I talk about maybe you could take a leaf and look at it at different seasons, different times of the year. How do the leaves look? They're so intricate with all their patterns, perhaps in autumn with their colors. But even everyday objects like a pen or a mug. And what is it that's special about this mug for you? Was it a present? Does it hold your favorite tipple? Does it give you your first morning cuppa, tea, coffee, warm drink? I drink a lot of hot water. I've always got my mug with me. I'm always got a drink there. So what are the things about the everyday objects in your life that are special, which is part of wonder, looking at things with those fresh eyes. And that's something that can be part of mindfulness, which can be part of rest. Also, meditation. Mindfulness can be a nice way to move into meditation so that you're not having to jump from action in our busy world straight into meditation, which can be a bit of a jolt, but maybe to go via mindfulness. So all of these things support this important aspect of our self-care. And sometimes people will say things like, it's too late for me. I've been ill so long, I've been carrying my stress for so long, or this is just who I am. I'm just an anxious person, a nervous person, whatever that might be. But Thich Nhat Hanh said that when we give ourselves the chance to let go of all our tension, the body's natural capacity to heal itself can begin to work. And I'd add, can begin to work most effectively, most efficiently. And it's that realization that this is what our body is designed to do. Our body is designed to heal itself. It's designed to be well. It's designed to thrive. And if that isn't your current experience, I would encourage you to look at what might you be able to change in your life that will support your body's natural, innate processes that we all have that are designed to get us back to well-being, keep us healthy, and help us to thrive, not just survive, but really thrive, really enjoy life. And as it says in this quote, it's about releasing tension. And in my book, I talk a lot about needing to feel safe. And if you've had trauma in your past, I don't just mean the big trauma, the obvious things like being in a life-changing accident or loss of a limb, maybe illness that has caused you to lose a lot of what you were able to do in the past, loss of a loved one. Those obviously are traumatic, but there's also the covert trauma, the combination of a lot of things over a period of time. Things that maybe we have normalized, maybe we needed to normalize in order to survive. We minimalized them. We said, oh, that was in the past, or other people have it so much worse than I do. But part of the healing process is, as they say, you need to feel it in order to heal it. And I think we need to acknowledge, we need to honor, we need to witness what we've been through in our own lives. And my experience, for me, I thought it was just normal. I thought other people maybe didn't have exactly the same experiences that I had, but they had their own. So I shouldn't moan. I shouldn't feel like I had reason to say I had been traumatized. But looking back now, having learnt so much about trauma, having read about trauma, I can understand that, as Gabor Mate says, it's not what happens to us, but it's our response to what happens to us. And if that response is that we shrink ourselves in some way, that we tone ourselves down, we become less, or we feel less, then that was trauma. And he also says that trauma isn't just what happens to us, it's also what didn't happen that we needed. And he talks about if a child has a mother who is depressed or in some other way distracted and not able to be emotionally present for her child, then her child is more likely to grow up with anxiety. because they have not had that co-regulation from mum or caregiver of whatever description. We all need that when we are really small. We need attachment and we need authenticity. And if we're not able to have those, and if there is a choice between the two, if we need the attachment paramount, if that is dependent on whether or not we're being authentic meaning we threaten our attachment, then the authenticity will be sacrificed. And all of this leads back to that feeling of tension, that feeling of not being safe. And safety here can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be psychological. So if you've had any experience or experiences that have been traumatic for you, are you feeling safe physically, emotionally, psychologically? If you're not, you'll be holding tension in your body. And tension is an indication that somewhere along the line, you have moved away from your true nature. And the more we can put safety in place, the more we can release that tension, let it go, or let it be, as Jack Cornfield says, and just let it go of its own accord, the more we can support our well-being. But it is possible. However far along the line we are, we can still support our well-being. We can uplift ourselves. And healing is about coming back to wholeness on all levels of our being: body, mind, spirit, social, all of it. That doesn't necessarily mean to say that our dis-ease, our symptoms will completely disappear. They may do, and they may do faster than you might imagine. But the important aspect is that we feel better in ourselves. And when we feel better in ourselves, often that leads on to feeling a lot better physically as well. So it's never too late. Also, it's never too early to start this journey. So just remember this quote, that we have this natural innate healing ability. Our body seeks to do it. It's programmed to do it. It's just asking us to support it, to put the right things in place in order for that to happen. And I love this quote. Part of Wild is all about fun. I mean, I'm talking here about enjoying our life. And a big part of that is about play. If you look at animals, they play no matter what age they are. They have that sense of fun and kind of humor. I don't know if that's too human a word, but we have animals here. We have a dog. She's just about to turn 7. We have horses, one of whom is, I think, just coming up to his teens. The other one is in her 20s. And even then, that they have a sense of play and a sense of humor and a sense of mischief, which is great. I love to see it. And as humans, we benefit from having that sense of fun and play. And we might explore that or express that in different ways from person to person. Again, it's subjective and individual. So it's really good to find out, what ways do you like to play? Are you creative? Are you sporty? Are you a collector? Do you like to travel? Is that kind of part of your sense of play because you're an explorer and you like to find out new things and have different experiences and see the world from the eyes of different cultures? Again, coming back to wonder and that new perspective and looking at things in different ways. So what is it that works for you? What does play mean for you? And we don't have to fit into some kind of play mold. If you're not sporty, that's absolutely fine. I'm not particularly sporty, but I do love to play. It's just I'm more of a creator and an adventurer and an explorer. That's my kind of play. So I love that. And I love to bring that into the things that I do. And if there's things that I feel challenge me, part of my play is to see, okay, where can I bring fun into this? Where can I make it that I'm having an adventure or that I'm exploring something, which you can see is reflected in Wild, because there's a lot of exploration that we could bring into Wild and Wild adventures. So That's what works for me. But for you, in your situation, explore for yourself. What is your sense of play, and how can we bring that? How can you bring that more into your life to lighten things up, to make it feel like you can dance and to enjoy whatever is going on? Remembering that's a choice. We can choose, perhaps often we are choosing by default, and we're going along with the norm. And here in Britain, in the UK, quite often our norm can be to moan. Unfortunately, Brits are famous for that. We moan about the weather. We moan about the queues, another British thing we have to queue. But when we can shift our perspective a little bit on that, see it with eyes of wonder, listen to our intuition, love ourselves in that situation, and dance with it, play with it, have fun with it, be light with it. I follow Abraham Hicks, and Abraham Hicks, in one of the recordings that I have, talks about, you guys, you all make too much of all of this. Basically, we take ourselves too seriously. We take life too seriously. I know I was the queen of taking things seriously years ago, but I've learned that didn't serve me. And now it's not such a big deal. If it doesn't work out, nah, I can do it again. I can do it another way. And I learned from somebody a great phrase, which I sometimes say in my head. Plot twist. If I've made a decision, a choice, and it's not working out how I thought it would, it's not going to plan, I'm not liking it as much as I expected, plot twist, and I can go off in another direction. That is my power of choice. And sometimes our choices may feel very limited, and we might not, on the surface, like any of the options that we see available to us. But just making a choice, any choice, and doing that for ourselves is empowering. And knowing that once we've made it, we're not tied into it. We haven't signed a contract. And even if you have, you can often get out of it. We can change that choice, because there are things about choices that we can't predict. We can't know what it's going to be like because we haven't done it before, perhaps. So if we make that choice, don't like how it's panning out, that's fine. Make another choice. Go in a different direction. It's not anybody else's life but yours. Nobody else can make you feel a certain way about the choices you've made, but also nobody else is in your shoes to know whether that choice is right for you or not. They can advise you, they can have an opinion, but only you will know if it's right for you. So keep it light, play with it, and know you have freedom and flexibility to make a new choice. Something else I'm passionate about is nutrition. Our cells are made from the food that we eat. When the food is digested properly and it's broken down and the nutrients are available to us, those are the building blocks that we use to build proteins, make cells, and all the rest of the things that our amazing body does for us every single day. So for me, I think it's very important to eat the nutrition that's appropriate for our bodies, for ourselves. And if you follow Ayurveda, they talk about different types of people, and perhaps you follow that or some other form that supports you in your particular energy type, your particular personality, or you may go with what is local to you, because there's also the perspective that where you have grown up, where your genes have come from, you are designed to eat a certain type of food, certain foodstuffs, because they have evolved in the same environment. And therefore, you have the right receptors on your cells, and you will be a good match for each other. But whatever way you choose to select the nutrition that works for you. Personally, I'm a vegan, but that doesn't work for everybody. There are also vegetarians, meat eaters, pescatarians, whatever works for you. For me, what's important is to make sure that your diet is balanced, that you're bringing in a lot of colors. They say eat the rainbow, which is why I like this particular image, because it's colorful. And I didn't know until I started looking into this some years ago that each different color brings different nutrients, which is why it's so important to have a wide range of colors to make sure that we're getting as many nutrients as we possibly can. And just also to bear in mind that if food is intensively farmed, then often it doesn't have as many nutrients as it might have done years ago, because intensive farming depletes the soil. So if you can, with fruit and veg, either buy organic, buy local, or grow your own. And you don't even need a big space. If you don't have a garden, you can grow things in pots. And even just a little bit. So it doesn't have to be all of your fruit and veg, but just little bits, whatever you can add. We have some apple trees, we have rhubarb, we have brambles growing in the hedgerows that I pick and eat. You can get sloes as well off blackthorn bushes that you can pick and eat, and you can make sloe gin, whatever works for you. But as much of that natural food, cooking from scratch, so not processed, it's not just the intensive farming, but also the processing that some of the food goes through when it's highly processed, that depletes it of nutrients. So just to say, really, in summary, eat a wide range of colors and eat as naturally, as unprocessed as you possibly can. And if possible, grow at least some of your own herbs as well. It doesn't have to be fruit and veg if you don't have space for that, but just a couple of herbs in a pot on a windowsill. It just adds that little bit of extra flavor, and also just there's goodness in all of these things. There are many things also that we are taught are weeds, but they are good for us. So you could look into that as well, because we can go out and forage, which can be a lot of fun, to add that extra zing and that extra little bit of goodness to our food, or to teas as well. Another really important thing, a lot of us apparently are not well enough hydrated, and our cells, every single cell in our body needs a good level of hydration in order to function appropriately, and also for the energy work in our body to take place appropriately. It all needs water. And in order for our bodies to take in and hold that water, we need the right fats as well. Fats have had a bad rap, and I now know that maybe now we're more aware there are some fats that are better than others. But to make sure that, as I was saying, a good balance in your diet, so you've got those fats as well as those nutrients, and also then making sure you get water, and not just liquid, because sometimes we focus more just on the liquid aspect, so plenty of drinking. We might have coffee, we might have tea, we might have soft drinks, but those aren't as good at hydrating the body. Also, coffee, personally, I can't get on with coffee. Coffee and I don't work very well together, but there are pros and cons to coffee. There are pros and cons to even tea, because tea contains caffeine as well, and caffeine can actually push us back into stress. So have your caffeine by all means, but also have time without caffeine. Soft drinks can contain caffeine, they can contain sugar, or they can contain artificial sweetener. Not good for our bodies. So if you do drink those things, make sure you also drink plenty of water. And actually, if you drink those things, you probably need the water to help flush out your system from the toxins, the chemicals, the artificial sweeteners, those sorts of things. So just to help keep those flushed from your body. And if you find water maybe a little bit boring, particularly if you are moving away from soft drinks and things like that, as it shows here, maybe put some fresh chopped fruit or vegetables. So things like cucumber, celery. That refreshing, it's really nice in the summer. Just adds that little refreshing element additional to the plain water. So all of these things you can play with, or with herbs, lemon balm, mint, rosemary, whatever is your favorite. So there are lots of things that you can add to your water, but I would recommend for hydration, it's plain water, not fizzy drinks or coffee or tea. Some other self-care tools that I'd like to share with you, I've listed them here and I'm going to go through each one in turn. And I'm going to start with a particular breathing exercise that I love. And the reason that I love it is, well, there are a couple of reasons. First of all, it just uses your hand. So it's very tactile. And it's good to use exercises that bring us back into our body. So they have a tactile element. And also this one, because what we basically do is trace around the thumb and the fingers. So it helps us to be mindful, helps to bring us back into the body, which can be really grounding and centering. So if you're feeling a little bit scatty and scattered and you're maybe distracted and a lot of things going on in your head, this is a really good one. Or you're feeling anxious and worried about things, this is a really good one because it just grounds you, centers you, focuses you on your breath, and all of those things help to calm you, which helps to calm your mind and helps it to be more focused. So what you do with this one is, either hand, doesn't matter if you're left or right-handed, just as you go up, you breathe in. And as you come down, you breathe out. In and out. In and out. In and out. In and out. And you can do that as many times as feels appropriate, and you can take it at the pace that's right for you. So if your body's not used to taking deep breaths, you might want to build up to that. So take it a little more quickly initially, but then as you get used to taking deep breaths, you can slow that down. And just being gentle, not forcing, just taking it in a pace and a degree that's really feeling good and appropriate and natural for you. Moving on, still thinking of the hands. This is finger holds taken from Jin Shin Jitsu, and it works off of the traditional Chinese medicine qi lines, energy lines in our body. And all you need to do is hold the particular digit. And each one has a different connection, different relation, different meaning, something else that it supports us with, which is listed here on the slide. The thumb is when we're worried, we're overthinking about things, maybe that video loop going round and round in our heads. So we can just hold our thumb. And this is something we can do very discreetly. We can be sitting in a meeting just with our hands on our lap, just holding the thumb, or whichever digit is appropriate, whatever you're feeling at the time. The first finger is fear. So if you're feeling fearful, that's the finger to hold. If you're feeling anxious, fearful, first finger. For the middle finger, this is rage or anger. Perhaps there's a reason why the bird is that particular finger. So again, just hold. And I sometimes like to hold the finger, focus on my breathing, and add a mantra. So something like, right here, right now, in this moment, I am safe. And just hold the finger, do the breathing, and repeating that mantra can really, again, help to still your body, still your mind, bring you back to a sense of groundedness, centeredness, and more clarity, so that you can then make the decisions, take the steps that are right for you. The next finger, the ring finger, is grief and sadness. So if you've experienced some loss recently, that could be loss of a friendship, loss of a person through bereavement, loss of a job, whatever that might be, the ring finger is the one to hold. And then the little finger is when you feel like, I'm just trying so hard and I've lost all color and light and joy from my life. The little finger is the one to hold in that case. And if you just feel like everything is out of balance, out of harmony, and it's clashing and clanging in your life, massage the middle of your palm, because that's the harmony point. And also a really good one just for general things is to hold the first two fingers. And again, something that you can do really discreetly. You can just be standing, sitting, holding those two fingers, and it looks perfectly natural and normal. Nobody's going to know that you're just giving yourself that little bit of extra self-care. Something else that for me you may have already picked up, I love to do is to go out into nature. And Phyllis Curott wrote this beautiful quote that really resonates for me, saying that when we look to nature, it's constantly revealing all sorts of wisdom that bring us back to the lost parts of ourselves. And trauma is disconnection. It can be disconnection from people, disconnection from our sense of place and where we are in our lives, of having a right to be here, have a place in our lives, and disconnection from ourselves. And Stephen Porges says it's a chronic disconnection. So if you're feeling like that, you're feeling disconnected, you're feeling there are parts of yourselves that have been scattered and lost, and you're feeling disjointed, go to nature. And there's a great quote from Wales. I won't be able to say it. It's something that comes historically in Welsh, where they talk about going back to the trees. When you're feeling out of balance, out of kilter, on edge, your sense of balance comes by going back to the trees. I think that's just so beautiful. And they talk about there's a kind of saying about being more tree. I know they talk about being more dog and that sort of thing, but also be more tree. Feel the solidity of the tree. Feel its history, how long it's been here, that sense of timelessness. Feel the strength of its trunk, of the roots going down into the earth, that stability, that groundedness, that connection with Mother Earth, and the reaching up to the sky, that kind of sense of reaching out, reaching up, hope, joy, growth, all of these aspects of wisdom that we can get from the tree, from nature. And did you know that trees have a heartbeat, a measurable heartbeat? So go out, hug a tree, or spend time with trees. I used to go for a walk in our local park. I talk about this in the book. And there was a tree that was growing at a tilt, at an angle. And I used to just lean up against that tree and feel the solidity, the strength of that trunk supporting my back, feeling the energy of the roots going down into the earth, and just allowing myself to be supported, to feel that energy, and to kind of recharge my batteries a little bit by doing that. So it gives you that. It also, as I said earlier, it can support us with stillness, which is so good for our well-being. But nature, just watching nature in her seasons, in the ebbs and the flows. So day and night, the tides, the moon, the seasons of the year, like I'm going into autumn here now as I record this, and just seeing the fruitfulness of autumn and the changes of the colors. And as we then move into winter and the trees lose their leaves, there's that idea of dropping things that we no longer need just letting them go, letting them be, and letting them go as well, letting them blow away in the wind. All of these different things we can take from nature. Part of my journey was to create a nature garden where I used to live in Bristol, and learning how to work with nature in terms of what to plant, in which parts of the garden, in which soil, or creating a pond and watching nature slowly fill that with different insects and frog spawn and plants as they would seed themselves around the garden. There were plants that I wanted to grow, but the garden didn't support them. And then there were other things that I would put in and they just went wild. We had forget-me-nots, and every spring we just had a carpet of blue. It was incredible. And poppies as well, little Welsh poppies that would seed themselves everywhere, and these little sunny yellow orange heads would pop up. So yes, look to nature. She helps us to reconnect with nature herself. We are just a part of nature, and through that with ourselves and our inner nature, and helps us then to know more about who we are and to step into that and to feel that sense of comfort within our own skin, being at home within ourselves. Another great thing, which also works very well with the body scan that I shared with you earlier, is journaling. So we can journal about lots of things. We can journal about what's happening day to day and maybe noticing patterns in how I'm feeling, how I'm responding to things, or what triggers me or activates things within me that leaves me feeling a certain way. Noticing all of that and recording that so that we can then just have that objectivity and notice those patterns and maybe see how we can put things into place to shift how we're feeling or responding or reacting. But also when you do a body scan and you notice whatever you notice in your body, getting curious with compassion, being gentle and kind to ourselves, we can explore those things in a journal. So we can also even do something known as somatic journaling. If I said about the shoulders as I went through the body scan, are your shoulders up, down, forward, back? Is there any tension in them? Is there any pain in them? And for anywhere else in the body as well. And if there is something that we notice, it's a bit of a niggle, it's a bit of a discomfort, we can just ask it. What do you have to share with me today? What information, what wisdom do you hold for me? So initially it might be like, oh, I'm not really sure what to write, but write that. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to say. This all feels a bit weird. That's fine. Just putting pen to paper, and it is better, they say, to put pen to paper because of the muscle action. You're actually involved more in that writing in a way. But if you prefer to use a keyboard, absolutely what works for you. But when we can put it down in black and white, when we can see it ourselves and witness it, and when we can give ourselves that freedom of expression to have a voice, but also to get out, to express, it can really help. And it just gives us that insight by being able to see it in a different way by putting it down on paper or through a keyboard onto a screen. But for the example of asking a shoulder what's going on, it might say, I'm feeling tight. I'm just carrying all of this weight, all of this tension, this burden that I've been holding for so long. Or I'm trying to duck away from something. Or I feel like I'm pushing against something. So whatever comes up for you, just see. You might be surprised at what insights it brings, what wisdom it gives you access to. You may have heard these called affirmations, but a friend of mine calls them power truths, and I love that because I love the concept of empowerment, feeling powerful in a very authentic and right and appropriate way, because I think in my past I felt very powerless. So powerless can really affect us and our body and our well-being and lead to things like burnout and chronic fatigue, that sort of thing. Powerful in appropriate ways, power with, not power over, can feel so expansive and hopeful and uplifting and enable us to know the things that we can do rather than focusing on the things that we can't. For power truths, the important thing when we're creating the sentences and the phrases that you want to use in your power truths is to keep them in the positive. Don't use any negation. So no words like shouldn't, can't, don't, those sorts of things. Just keep them in the positive, in the affirmative, hence affirmations. And use the present tense. So you're wanting something that isn't that kind of when thing of when this happens, then I will feel. It's more, I am so grateful that right now my body is getting better. It's healing every single day. Something along those lines. So present tense. And make sure it's something you can really believe. You might not at this point be able to say, I am confident, I can stand up in front of people and speak, or I feel so healthy in my body. Those might be a step too far, depending on where you're starting. But whatever you can say that is supportive of that aim, but is still true for you right now. So like I was saying, my body is healing more and more every day. Perhaps that's something that is more believable, that you can really tune into and feel truth in your body. And bring gratitude in. So I gave that example saying, I am so grateful. I am delighted. It's a joy to me that I'm getting better every day. It's a joy to me that I connect with new people. If you're thinking in terms of maybe speaking or networking or something that you're wanting to build up the ability for and the belief in. And bring in as many senses as you can. So along with the power truth and the statement that you're using, bring in the feeling words and the sensory words in there too, as much as you can, but also visualize, use imagery, because as many senses as you can bring in makes it as real for you as possible. And athletes, top athletes use this. They visualize themselves doing their sport, whether that's high jump, long jump, hurdles, sprinting, or canoeing, horse riding, whatever it is, they visualize it and they visualize themselves doing it successfully again and again and again, because that fires off neurons in the brain, and the neurons that fire together wire together. They've done experiments that prove even if somebody isn't doing the action, the brain is still making the changes if they are playing it out in their heads. So the body doesn't need to do it. Obviously, if you can add that in, that's even better. But just doing it in your head is enough to create those changes in your brain. Our brains, our bodies are such amazing things. So power truths can be a very uplifting thing, a very supportive thing, and can really help to shift us into that new mindset, that new perception, so that those changes start to come so much more easily and smoothly. And the last one I want to share with you is self-talk. Words are so powerful. You may have picked that up from the earlier one, power truths, the previous one. But the way that we talk to ourselves, it's creative. Anything that we say after I am, so whatever that might be, again, going back to the power truths, this is how they work. I am is a creative statement. Whatever I add after that, we're basically telling ourselves that's our identity, that's who we are, and in time it actually creates that. Abraham Hicks said, a belief is only a thought I keep thinking, and the more we think it, the more we believe it, the more it becomes true. We're actually effectively creating that in our lives. So if we are saying, I am tired, I am sick, I am lonely, I am at the end of my tether, I am experiencing burnout. The more we tell ourselves that, the more it becomes our reality, and we need to keep reaffirming that, because otherwise we feel like something's not right, something is off. But that becomes a cycle, and it's a cycle that if we want things to change, we need to do something differently. So we need to interrupt that cycle. So here, what I'm encouraging you and inviting you to do is to listen. Just listen, just observe your self-talk. And the more you observe it, you might like to journal on it. You might like to create power truths around it. But the more you observe it and see how you're speaking to yourself, becoming conscious of that, the more you can then have that opportunity to create that pause, create that interrupt, reframe it, change it, write a power truth, a more positive statement. And when you find yourself slipping back into the old statement, because we will, those wirings that we've created up to this point, they took time. They'll take time to undo. But it's about focusing on the new, not the old, not trying to fight or resist the old. If you find yourself slipping back into that habit, it's just, oops, plot twist. I'm going to stick in my new power truth, my empowering new statement, my new belief about myself. Because doing that over time is going to shift things for you. And it's going to shift it in a much easier, more graceful way that will perhaps initially feel a bit alien, and our body and our mind will possibly be throwing things at us like, oh, I don't need to do that today. I'm tired. I've been doing a lot of thinking today, so I'll just give that a miss. But the thing with that is we're always thinking, and it can feel like you're having to put effort into it initially because we are making a change. But the easier, the more fun, the more of those senses we can bring into this. So I love it when I speak positively to myself because it feels so good. And there are lots of other things you can use. There are mudras, hand shapes. You can use power truths to support this. You can use your journaling to support this. You can use mindfulness, whatever works for you. All of these things that I'm sharing with you today are things that you can put together in ways that work for you. Choose the ones that feel right for you. You don't need to do them all, certainly not all at once, but even just try one, see if it works, and then try another one, which might not be quite so good. You can park that. You might like to come back to it at another time, because in another time, in another situation, it might be the thing that's appropriate for then. So again, just playing with them, seeing what works, what maybe not, kind of hitting the nail on the head, kind of resonating with you right now, that's okay. And I also share other ideas and tips and techniques on my YouTube channel, Wild TV. And if you go to the self-care exercises playlist, you'll see other examples of things that you can do. And I share these ones there as well. But self-talk is huge because we speak to ourselves all the time, every day. And just at that point also to say, it's not only in words, paying attention to our body language. How are you standing, sitting, feeling about yourself? Are you hunching over? Which we might be doing that at our desk as well, but it's squashing our digestive system. It's reducing the lung capacity. It's leaving us feeling, because when we feel depressed, this is kind of the body shape, body posture that we might have. Just being able to have a straight back, we don't have to be ramrod, but straight, well, I say straight, obviously the spine isn't like a straight line, it's got that beautiful S curve, but holding ourselves in a way that feels comfortable and natural, not stiff, and also that we can be flexible and fluid within that. But shoulders down and back again, not pushing it, but just where it's comfortable, head up, then that can help us to feel better. We don't feel like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. We can breathe fully. Our digestion isn't squashed. So these things can really help as well. So it's not just self-talk in terms of words and phrases, it's also self-talk in terms of our body language. If you have any questions from anything that I've shared in this masterclass, do please get in touch. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So you're welcome to contact me there. Or also you can go to my website, and the second tab in, I think it's the second tab, might be the first. One of the tabs up at the top is for you to contact me. There are lots of different options there as well. Do please send through any questions, any comments. I would love to hear from you. And also I'll be posting this on my YouTube channel, so feel free to comment below. But only if you're happy, obviously, for it to be in a public forum. If you'd rather message me privately, then please do so. And one of the ways in which you can connect with me is using this URL. And that takes you through to my calendar on HubSpot, and then you can book in a time and a date for a Zoom call. I'm very happy to have a chat. As you might be able to tell, I love talking about any issues around well-being, and I love connecting with people and being able to chat about well-being, share conversations about journeys of healing. So yeah, do please feel free to get in touch. Those are my platforms where you can find me. Just search for Wild Wellbeing. You should be able to locate me that way. I also have a Facebook group. You are most welcome to come along and take a look. It's a private group, so you do need to request in order to join. But come in, take a look around. If you decide it's not for you, that's absolutely fine. There is no problem if you choose not to stay. I also have a Wild Way guide, which is simple, step-by-step through the wild process. And it's just a little taster. If you'd like to take a look, then feel free to download that. The way to get that is to join my Facebook group. Again, feel free just to come in, grab your Wild Way guide, and then if it's not for you, you don't have to stay. But in that group, I just share posts that are aimed at being uplifting, supportive, tips, hints, ideas around well-being. So yeah, if that interests you at all, do come along and join us. And lastly, I did mention my book, so just to share that here. And if you would like to take a look, it's available on my website. If you go to equenergy.com, and again, the tabs at the top, there's one that says My Book, and you can order it from my website as well. Just go along to the shop, click on shop. Don't worry about the drop-down menu, just go to shop, and then you can find it there. And lastly, if you'd like my business card, it's available as an electronic business card, which you can get by scanning this QR or going to the link. Lastly, I'd just like to say thank you very much for joining me. If you would like a copy of these slides, then they are available for you. And that would mean that the links are clickable. It's a PDF, so the links are live. You can get that by either going to that URL link or by scanning the QR code. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you find this helpful and interesting. And do, as I say, please get in touch if you have any comments or any questions. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.